So ideally in my content, I like to use Twitter and Instagram to feature your takes in the content, but for the first time, I got a video response to my question on Instagram. So here's my man's take on whether Juju's gonna leave or not.
I'll say Juju is gonna leave, definitely. There's a lot of good teams that he can go to, but I would really say teams like Washington, team that really need a receiver. You know, it's kind of a big ego, I'll say that, but he can improve himself, so he's a great player. So
there is a ton of depth in NFL free agency this year, especially at the wide receiver position. Players like AJ Green, Allen Robinson, T.Y. Hilton, Sammy Watkins, Marvin Jones, Corey Davis, and of course, the individual that we're making this video about, Juju Smith-Schuster, are all hitting free agency. Also, technically, Antonio Brown's hitting free agency, but, you know, I have a feeling that we know where he's going to end up being. And while many people thought that Juju Smith-Schuster may be a lock to return to Pittsburgh, I personally feel a little bit differently about the matter. And Juju Smith-Schuster has been dropping hints about his future in Pittsburgh. And we did some digging and we got some news from Fox Sports Radio, the Doug Gottlieb Show. And of course, we even got a rip from one of Juju Smith-Schuster's gaming sessions on Twitch to include in this video. Before we get to the content, I just want to remind you guys we're giving away a PlayStation 5 to a subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. Whether you're an old sub or a new sub, if you sub and hit that notification bell, you've entered for a chance to win a PS5. If you want additional entries, follow us on Instagram and Twitter because we do additional giveaways on those platforms. And I typically use Twitter and Instagram to integrate your guys' takes onto our content. In addition, I want to thank my latest Mike Mafia members that went the additional mile to support me creating this content for you guys on a full-time basis. Shout out to Cesar Cortez, Holden Snyder, Edward King, Ben Reuter, Andrea Bank, Jeremy Billman, and the Leonard Ralph, and Kit Halls and Junior Gonzalez for joining on the Mike Mafia Soldier tier. Thank you guys for going out of your way to support me. And now that we got all that out of the way, break!
Juju, since the season has ended, have you spoken with Ben?
I have not talked to Ben since the last game.
Is that normal? Like on most years, do you talk to Ben after the season?
I mean, we give him contact. I think this one's a little bit different just because, like, you know, him trying to figure out what he wants to do in his situation. What it looks like, it says that he wants to come back and he wants certain players back. So I would love to come back. I would love to play with Ben, you know, for his times being here.
Well, that's always the thing in Pittsburgh, right? Great organization, but the big contract, it's a hard one to get. Does it change? Because Ben came out last week and said money doesn't matter to him. He wants to rework his money, you know, keep guys around.
Nah, you know, it means a lot. I mean, you talk about a guy who's, you know, he wants to play again. He wants to have the same guys around him, and that's what it's probably just going to have to take. And you know, he doesn't care about the money. He wants to restructure his contract, and I think that's pretty cool. You know, it just goes to show that he's more about the team than anything else.
Okay, money obviously is important, and you're not going to play for 50 years. But how do you balance out winning, the quarterback you play with, the style of play, and you know, the sweat equity, a place like Pittsburgh, a place that draft you? How does that balance in your mind in free agency?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, I'm always about winning. You know, I'm always down to, you know, I want to be on a team where, you know, we're fighting, you know, we compete for the playoffs every year. As far as the business sides and the money, I feel like, you know, I want to be paid for what I'm worth. Obviously, you know, for what I do, you know, for the team, particularly, and like then again, it all makes sense, you know, to bring in Ben and you know, to have a quarterback, you know, who I can play with for the future.
NFL free agency is among us, ladies and gentlemen, and that means we're going to get a ton of rumors about potential player movement. And a huge favorite as to a player that could potentially leave his team for other pastures is Juju Smith-Schuster. And it's not only on Juju's side, it's on Juju's side and on the Pittsburgh Steelers side of their best interest to potentially part ways. Now, if you pay attention to the interview that I just played for you, Juju Smith-Schuster essentially says, hey, I would love to continue playing for the Steelers, but financially it needs to make sense for myself. Now, I want to make something clear, and this is my feelings towards Juju Smith-Schuster, because I know Steelers Nation probably wants to move on from him after the ugly way this promising season ended, with him saying that the Cleveland Browns were just blankless faces, which is apparently a quote from Mike Tomlin and the Steelers' ideology, which was clearly misinterpreted. But if you look at Juju Smith-Schuster statistically, he's a pretty good wide receiver. I wouldn't say an absolutely elite top 5 wide receiver, but still a great addition to any team. And to truly evaluate where Juju Smith-Schuster is, his past year he had under 1,000 yards receiving despite playing in 16 games, and throughout his 4 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, he had a very promising rookie season and a remarkable sophomore season, and ever since then, he's kind of regressed. And 2 years ago, I said that's mainly due in part to Ben Roethlisberger not being able to take the field because he was out the entire season with an injury. But this entire season seemed to be a little bit different to me. Now, look, as a social media influencer myself, I understand doing whatever it takes to grow your brand, especially in today's world when you have the opportunity to leverage the fact that you are a well-known sports figure into growing a business for yourself. You need to take the opportunity by the horns and try to make the most out of it, because we all know that football isn't forever, unless if you're Tom Brady, of course. But as a result, this past year, we saw Juju Smith-Schuster really focusing more on his business outside of football than the product on the football field. And my rule has always been the same. So long as the Pittsburgh Steelers are winning, then Juju Smith-Schuster could dance on as many logos as he wishes. But that's the problem. After a while, the Pittsburgh Steelers stopped winning, and Juju Smith-Schuster continued dancing on logos. And once that happens, of course, the way that is perceived is that Juju Smith-Schuster cares way more about his business than the well-being of his team. And ultimately, he stopped because his head coach told him to stop, but that didn't really mitigate any of the problems that the Steelers had. And while everyone seems to love Juju Smith-Schuster, at least prior to this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't necessarily need Juju Smith-Schuster to come back. When you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver core, they have made significant investments in the wide receiver position over the last 3 years. And if you want to include Juju Smith-Schuster, you could make that the last 4 years. In 2017, the Steelers spent a 62nd overall pick on Juju Smith-Schuster, which turned out to pan out for them. Juju was the yin to Antonio Brown's yang, and the combination of the two worked perfectly. As a matter of fact, they were really good for commercials too, until obviously Antonio Brown had his falling out. The Steelers would move on from Antonio Brown and select James Washington with the 60th overall pick the following year, and then Deontay Johnson with the 66th overall pick the year after, until more recently drafting Chase Claypool with the 49th overall pick. That's 4 straight NFL drafts that a second-round pick was spent on a wide receiver, and if you ask me, I'd say that the Pittsburgh Steelers hit on all of them. With that being said, it makes it very difficult to justify the Pittsburgh Steelers telling Ben Roethlisberger to take a pay cut just so they could bring back Juju Smith-Schuster, when, in my opinion, I don't think he is the engine of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, and that money could be reinvested elsewhere. This, combined with this clip that Juju Smith-Schuster said while he was playing video games, kind of makes me feel like he is going to be headed elsewhere very soon.
Where you at, Juju? You in the West too?
Yeah, LA.
Damn.
Going to the Chargers, my boy Keenan. Okay, I'm out here.
Now, in this clip, he jokes that he is going to the Los Angeles Chargers. However, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. If you look at the LA Chargers, they have a stacked wide receiver core that features the likes of Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, but then again, Juju Smith-Schuster does line up in the slot, so it could make a lot of sense to feature him in a crazy passing attack that features Justin Herbert, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen. Now, another team that could desperately use a wide receiver that is very anti-drafting a wide receiver is the LA Rams. And in these instances, I could see Juju Smith-Schuster actually taking a pay cut to play with either the Rams or the LA Chargers. The reason being so he could just simply be in Los Angeles altogether. Juju Smith-Schuster obviously went to USC and is very focused on his career in entertainment and social media, in addition to the NFL. So when Juju Smith-Schuster says in a Twitch stream jokingly that he wants to play in the Chargers, well, this is a guy that understands how social media works really, really well. He knows what he's doing. So just giggling and saying, I want to play for the LA Chargers, is him essentially trying to cover up a clear tampering attempt and implying to the Chargers, hey, come through and call me. I really want to play for your team. It makes sense for all sides. And of course, I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers should try to bring back Juju, not because he's not talented enough, but because they already have adequate wide receiver depth. And again, with the pay cut that Ben Roethlisberger's taking, they should definitely look elsewhere to reinvest that money. But that's my take on the matter. What do you think about this entire Juju Smith-Schuster situation? Do you take that little clip that I showed you from Twitch seriously, or do you think that he's just exaggerating? If you're a Steelers fan, how would you feel if Juju Smith-Schuster left? Are you really attached to him, or do you think it's time for them to part ways anyways? And if he does leave, should he try to join the Chargers, the Rams, or another team? Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.